There comes a time in everybody's life where one must ask themselves these questions. Did the choices I make in life better myself? How has my life impacted others? And the most brain-busting question, what if? These are all very heavy-handed questions, so when we think too much and get tired of getting stuck in our brains, we move on to our hobbies, our passions, and entertainment to lose ourselves. We have these tasks to help distract ourselves from the mind-numbing questions, to get out of our heads, to escape somewhere else. But what happens when something that is supposed to be for enjoyment asks you the question that keeps you up all night? What happens when a passion asks one of these important questions? What happens when you think, what could have happened? In this video, I will be sharing a remarkable happenstance when one of my passions was actually a soliloquy of my entire existence, and how a video game can be more than just pixels on a screen. A mere video game that just so happened to be the story of my life. On November 18th, 1994, I was adopted from South Korea by Tammy and Malcolm McHugh. I grew up in a small town in Iowa, where for the majority of my time, I was the only kid who was not white. This, however, was not a problem, as the people in my town did not really see color. Eventually, I no longer saw myself as Asian, I thought of myself as white. Even today, I sometimes look in the mirror and forget that I have features from the East. I often forget my roots, and my perception of myself was just a bumpkin from a small farming town. However, this mindset was not always the way I thought about myself. During my teenage years, I asked myself who I was, where did I come from, and why couldn't I have stayed in Korea? These questions would cause a rift between my family, myself, and truly the notion of who I was, as I rebelled about being a white kid and yearned for the life that I thought was taken from me. I started to think that I wish I was never adopted. I wish I had grown up with my Korean birth parents, and what if my life had taken this path? I could be happier if I didn't grow up with these people. I would be a completely different person, but I would at least be true to myself and my origins. This identity crisis is fairly common with adoptees. For an example, if a person adopted from Asia who grew up in a white family tried to talk with another group of Asians, they might not see them on a friendly level, as the adoptee does not know the social norms or cultures of Asia. At the same time, if said adoptee from Asia were to approach a Caucasian group, they might not feel like they don't know how to interact with the adoptee, as they assume he has a different upbringing. It was this very notion that took over my thought process. Being a teenager really does have weird effects on how humans develop, but luckily I was able to escape this teenage angst with some video games. As I grew up, I really got into video games. One franchise that stuck with me more than most was a series called Fire Emblem. A tactical RPG, very similar to chess, from Japan, where you could control an entire army who you come to learn about their personal lives and struggles while you save the world from some radical change. The characterization of each member of your army is fleshed out with detailed backgrounds. Death is also an important factor in the game. If you make a wrong move and the member of your forces who you became invested in his story that you learn has a wife and kids he's fighting for dies in battle, he is out for the rest of the game. That man who has a family is actually dead. He won't come back to his wife and kids, as he died doing what he thought was right for his family in the first place. This game mechanic works very well as an engrossing gimmick and as a narrative story. You feel like a tactical genius when you finish a level with no casualties. It's what really makes Fire Emblem Fire Emblem. That simple permanent death feature is what really won me over to the franchise. As I grew older, my personality and brain changed naturally. I no longer thought that I should have never been adopted. I thoroughly enjoyed my small-town American upbringing. I fixed my relationships with my family, and my life was in a good place. But, as much as life has its ups, it will always have downs that counter all the good. On March 8, 2016, my mom passed away from cancer. Several thoughts and emotions ran through my mind during this time. My future wife will never get to meet the woman who raised me. Do I leave an open chair at my wedding where my mom would have sat? Would that be too presumptuous? My kids would never truly get to meet their grandmother. I had just become excellent friends with my mom and was really looking forward to growing old together, a dream that would never be realized now. Tammy McHugh had battled skin cancer, breast cancer, and skin cancer again in her life. When they were starting to get bad, and the trips to various hospitals were numerous, I needed an escape. Something that could take my mind off the horrible factoids of life. A place where I could not think. I needed a video game. February 19th, 2016, Fire Emblem Fates was released in North America. The game had already released in Japan a year earlier, with the Japanese title being Fire Emblem If. Being an avid fan, I bought the game as soon as it came out. This game's main appeal was of its main branching story arc. You play as Corrin, or a customizable character. He or she is the offspring of a king in a land that is basically Japan called Hoshido. As a baby, Corrin is taken from his parents as the enemy's nation's king decides to raise Corrin as his own. Several years pass and Corrin grows up as a noble. This nation Corrin grew up is European influence called Nor. Corrin becomes very close with his adopted siblings, and they in turn see Corrin as a close sibling as well. One day, Corrin gets kidnapped and discovers that his kidnappers are actually his birth family. Corrin learns about the people who were truly related to him by blood, and about their culture and way of life, including all of his blood siblings and his birth mother. Corrin learns about a different life he or she could have had, and learns to love them. Not long, an unknown entity attempts to kill Corrin, but Corrin's mother saves him and dies in the process. Soon after, Corrin finds himself in the middle of a skirmish between Nor and Hoshido. This causes the main plot point in the game, who Corrin should live with. You, the player as Corrin, must choose whether or not to side with the people that raised you, or the people that lost their relative who want you back. Deciding which family you choose drastically changes the outcome of the story. It is a tale that is fitting of the name Fire Emblem Fates, or in Japan, Fire Emblem If. Who will you choose? It's incredible that this game were to fall into my hands at such a time and age where I'm still learning on who I am in the world. Graduated college, struggling to find out what my future should be, and finally calling myself a legal adult were all things that I was in 2016. With the death of a parent at such an age, this further supplemented a large part of changing into an adult. As I played Fire Emblem Fates in waiting rooms, and eventually alone, I could not believe the similarities, the sheer timing of it all, of this game. While I did start out with the European family, a younger me would have always picked a side with the Asian family, as he yearned to learn of his past. At the time around my mom's death, I picked the European side as it correlates to the mindset that it's the people who raised, cared, and loved for you who are your family. Corrin's mother sacrificed herself so that Corrin would be able to live on is much the same way as my own birth mother did when she gave me up for an adoption, so that I could live a better life than she could have gave. Corrin does not have to be Corrin, as you can make the character whoever you want. I believe that when you get to a customization of a character in a game, one of 4 options happen. You leave the character at default, you make your own original character, you take another character from something else and put it in the game, or you make yourself. I almost always make myself in games because if I made the choices in the game, those would be the actual choices I would actually make, which correlates to if I was actually in the game. Confusing, right? The character of Corrin is literally my own life, as he is born from an Asian family, but was raised in a white family. We both grew up in a white community and never learned about our birth family's ways, traditions, and cultures. When my mom died, I took it upon myself to be a rock for the rest of my family. I had always liked the character Xander, and I even tried my best to emulate his personality and strong emotional state when it came to matters of this magnitude of seriousness as the death of my mom. Xander is the crown prince to Nor. His father is an evil tyrant that is bananas. Xander looks out for his siblings as he is the eldest brother, but at the same time, he has to follow his evil father's commands, such as killing without a worthy cause. Shout out to Ghast Station on his analysis of Xander and all of his content. Really, go check him out. He does amazing work on the Fire Emblem franchise. It's his video that helped me get a clearer picture on Xander's affinity and what his role was to bring balance between what he feels and how he guides and protects his family. It's uncanny how similar this game is to my life. While you can choose between which family to side with, there is also a third choice. Ultimately, it is to choose neither and both families. Putting aside my opinions on the third arc, I find that path as the person who I am and who I am becoming 2 years to this day on the anniversary of my mom's death. Straight up, the name of the game is called Fates. Was it my fate to be adopted? To live in a small town in Iowa? To have my mom die when I was at such an age? What if I was never adopted? What if I never grew up in Iowa? What if my mom hadn't died? The game's name itself are the same questions I asked as a young, impressionable teenager and an adult who thinks about his mom every day. It's taken therapy, several awkward and embarrassing moments that I personally done, and realizing what I need to do and cut in my life to see the outcome of this culmination of a life that I've been living. Corrin's mentality is that of one that says in the third choice, I am of both worlds and I will champion both. It's that kind of mindset that I see now is the person that I am becoming and am wholeheartedly excited to see more of. Fire Emblem Fates is definitely not my favorite Fire Emblem game in the franchise, not by a long shot, but it's still a very special game to me. I'd even say that it's the most special and important game to me. It came in a time in my life where I was at a crossroads, finally stepping into the world of an adult, and a time where I needed solace from a horrible passing. It's not a perfect game, but I can't think of a game that perfectly paints my thoughts, ideas, and life into a passion of mine. Fire Emblem Fates is without a doubt the game about me.